23. Izzy isn't in the lobby waiting for Rachel when she arrives. She runs up the stairs, wondering, starting to get frightened. She raises her hand to knock, then thinks maybe he's taking a nap. But immediately she thinks something else. Yes, he's sleeping, but he won't wake up, can't wake up, may never wake up, and her breath mimics his, crowding her chest. A woman in slippers carrying a soggy bag in her arms passes and gives Rachel a close look. "You want something?" Rachel shakes her head. Does she look like a suspicious character? The woman drops her garbage into the incinerator and walks away, looking back over her shoulder several times. Rachel listens at Izzy's door, hears nothing. She knocks, a light tap. She raps a little harder, then tries the doorknob. "Grandpa! Grandpa?" Izzy opens the door. He's in slippers, wearing a faded plaid bathrobe over his shirt and pants.
"Oh, it's you."
She walks into the apartment. A blanket is rucked up at the foot of the couch. He sits down heavily.
"I didn't have such a good night."
His eyes are small, the whites streaked with red.
"I didn't sleep so much."
"Maybe you don't want to go out for a walk today?" She breaks off. Izzy has fallen asleep, sitting up.
"Huh?"
His head jerks to one side. His eyes open. He stares around with a fearful look.
"What is it?"
he says, hoarsely. His nose is sweating. Rachel brings him a glass of water. "Do you want to rest a little more, Grandpa?" She sits on the couch next to him. He gulps the water, wipes his mouth.
No, I'm going out."
He takes his wallet from the side table, opens it.
"I'll do a little shopping."
He counts out a few bills. Later, at home, she remembers his hands. Thick, gray, shaking. Two little girls in jeans, ribbons bouncing on the ends of their braids, come out of an apartment on Izzy's floor. "Hi!" they chorus to Rachel. "Hi," Rachel says. "You live here?" the smaller girl says. She has one front tooth missing. Rachel shakes her head. "What's your name?" "Rachel. What's yours?" "Darlene. And this here is my sister, Tracy." "Hi, Darlene. Hi, Tracy." "Don't mind Darlene," says Tracy. "You go to school?" Darlene says. "Darlene asks too many questions," Tracy says. She has fat, shining cheeks. "All she does all day is ask questions. She drives me crazy." "You like to be late to school?" Darlene puts her hands in her back pockets. "I like to be late to school. I like detention. Who you seeing here?" "Darlene, shut up." "My grandfather." "Who's he?" "Darlene." "Mr. Shapiro." "Oh, the mean man." "Darlene, he is not." "He is too. What do you know, Tracy? He has mean faces." The elevator arrives. "Bye, Rachel," they both yell, getting in. That day, the mean man and Rachel walk to the Jewish cemetery where her grandmother is buried. At different times through the year, Rachel has come here with her mother. The gravestone dates back over 100 years. The cemetery, at the end of a narrow street crowded with small houses, is hidden by a fieldstone wall. A wrought iron Star of David. A wrought iron Star of David rises above the gate. Izzy leans over, looking at the wall. Rachel sees nothing but stones, moss, dried up leaves.
What are you looking at?
I'm looking at good work. Look at this wall. Straight, solid, like the day it was built.
He breathes for a moment.
You see the way the stones fit?
Rachel examines the wall.
They seem to fit okay.
Not okay. Good. Very good.
Something about his tone catches her attention. Some little note of pride or possession.
Grandpa, did you build this wall?
He looks at her.
I fixed it. This is an old wall. It was falling down and I fixed it.
He bends over again.
You see this? This wall has almost no mud.
It's not muddy at all, Rachel says.
You don't know what I mean, huh?
You said it wasn't muddy and I said
mud, not muddy. Mud. You don't know what mud is?
He's laughing at her.
Of course I know what mud is.
No, you don't. It's cement. It's what they put between the stones. Today they spread it everywhere like peanut butter. Because today...
He pauses.
Today they have machines. Cement mixers. You pull a lever and you have cement coming out like soft ice cream.
He takes out his handkerchief, wipes his mouth.
The hard work is the stones. Mud is easy. Stones are hard. So they use too much mud. You understand?
Yes, I do now.
When I started this, the hard work was mud. Harder than stones. Everything had to be mixed by hand. Heavy work.
The long speech is using his breath.
So you didn't waste the mud.
He leans against the wall, breathing.
You used less.
Ugh. Rachel hoists herself onto the wall. She runs her hands over the top of the stones the same way he did.
Did you always work on walls?
At first I worked on nothing. I only mixed the mud. I carried it to the bricklayers. I was an apprentice. I was 15, doing a man's work. The worst jobs. That's what the apprentices get. Everybody yells and you run. You better be strong.
He stops. His hands wander over his chest as though he wonders what's going on in there.
5 years before, they let me put a hand on stone. You know Clear Brook Creek.
Clearbrook Road? I go to school that way.
I said Clear Brook Creek. How do you think the road got its name? The brook runs under it. Some places it runs next to it. You ever notice that?
I guess so.
Don't guess so. Yes or no?
Yes.
You ever see the bridges where the road crosses the creek? I built every one of those bridges.
I didn't know that.
Now you do.
He almost doesn't get the last word out. He starts coughing and then wheezing. His face suffuses. His chest rattles alarmingly. Rachel hops off the wall. How easily she hops around. How easily she clears her throat and breathes. How smoothly, how effortlessly she does it all. She stands near him. Would like to hold his arm at least, but knows better. All she is allowed to do is stand by and wait for the coughing, the wheezing, the rattling to subside. He spits, wipes his mouth, breathes.
Okay,
he says.
Okay, let's go in.
In the cemetery, they walk slowly up the hill between the row of stones. Drifts of leathery leaves cover the paths. He stops at her grandmother's grave. A small, flat stone. Eva Devansky Shapiro, devoted wife, beloved mother. He kneels down, brushes at the stone. A wind springs up, whips Rachel's hair around her face. In the west, the sky is turning a clear, cold blue. Rachel stands very still, watching Izzy. How odd to see him this way, on his knees. He keeps brushing the stone, brushing away twigs and bits of leaves.
You told me not to come here, so I don't,
he says. Then he says something else, low. Rachel can't make it out. A smile crosses his lips. He nods his head. Is he talking to her grandmother? A shiver takes Rachel by the neck, shakes her like a dog shaking a bone. The dead and their spirits are all around. She bows over Izzy, touches his arm urgently. He looks up at her. His eyes are gray as water-washed pebbles, bleached and distant. Should we go, Grandpa? It's getting dark. He unwinds himself with a groan. She takes his arm to help him up, and he allows it. His arm trembles under hers. Then they go back down some of the rows of graves. It's dusk. The trees are flat, black. Lacy patterns against a greenish sky. On the street, houses are lit up. Cars approach, their headlights glowing dimly. Rachel and Izzy move along without speaking.
What's the use?
Izzy says at last, and his face takes on its familiar, remote look. All the same, when Rachel leaves him for the first time, she kisses him goodbye.
Don't come in with me,
Izzy instructs Rachel. They're in front of the little market a couple blocks from his house.
Grandpa, I'll wheel the cart with you.
I'll wheel with my own cart. Stay out here.
I want to buy something for myself. I want an apple.
I'll buy it for you.
I want to choose my own apple.
What makes you so stubborn?
Look who's talking.
Inside, he pushes the cart.
Get me a can of sardines. Get me a box of cornflakes. Get me raisins.
Now that she's there, he orders her around as if shopping is unmanly.
Milk. And don't get me 2% stuff. It tastes like chalk.
At the checkout counter, he peels a $10 bill off of a small roll. Have a good one, the cashier says, putting the raisins in the bag. Rachel goes for the bag, but Izzy brushes her aside, picks it up. She follows him outside.
Would you just let me carry that, please?
No.
Why?
Already he's breathing too hard.
I can carry my own groceries.
I know you can, she argues. I didn't say you couldn't. But could you just let me do it today?
Be quiet. Stop bothering me.
He carries the bag all the way back. In the lobby, he sits down on the bench, but doesn't give up the bag. Sits there and breathes. When he gets on the elevator, he holds up his hand for her to stay back. The elevator door closes. She watches the dial moving sluggishly from 1 to 2. Suddenly, she is so angry that her head feels as if it's on fire. Izzy is like that elevator door, opening for a moment, then closing in her face. She can't just have her way. She can't just go away, leave. She has to tell him something. She runs up the stairs, making a speech in her head.
Would it be too much to ask that you at least say goodbye to me? It's rude not to, but it's much more than that. I have this weird unfinished feeling when you leave me like that. And tell me this again. Why didn't you let me help you carry that groceries bag? And what's wrong with my going up in the elevator with you?
She arrives on the 3rd floor just as Izzy is getting out of the elevator. He doesn't see her coming from the stairs. He's talking, she thinks, to someone in one of the apartments. But There's no one around. No one else in the hall. He's talking to himself.
Yeah,
He says,
yeah, that's good, Izzy. Good, good. You did it.
he laughs briefly.
Pass the test.
From the stairs, she watches him unlock his door, go inside. Then she goes back down the stairs.